The British military is in freefall. Recruitment is down by 20% in 2026, with the RAF admitting woke DEI policies are turning off young men who want to fight, not to sit through pronoun workshops. Enter John Carr, a Royal Marine chaplain sacked in 2023 for daring to criticise these policies, saying they divide troops and undermine unity. In February 2026, with no updates on his case but veterans still raging, is the UK military too woke to win wars? And was Carr fired for telling the truth, or is it all just overblown? Today, we're going to be doing a full breakdown of the UK's woke military crisis in 2026, falling recruitment, DEI obsession, and the case of John Carr, the chaplain dismissed for speaking out against it. We'll look at the numbers, the policies, Carr's story, veteran reactions, and what it means when the armed forces prioritise politics over fighting power, the recruitment crisis and its numbers, and the woke factor. Let's start with the hard cold facts. The UK armed forces are facing a massive recruitment shortfall in 2026. The latest MOD figures show they army recruited only 38% fewer troops in 2022 and 2023 than in 2019. And the net addition was just 240 new soldiers in a recent year, the lowest fully trained count in 200 years. Overall, the military is at 72% capacity, with RAF and Navy similar in shortfalls. White British males, the traditional backbone, are dropping off the fastest. Reasons? Low pay, poor housing, and endless deployments, but increasingly woke policies are cited. To combat this, the MOD has launched the Armed Forces Gap Year scheme in December 2025. Starting March 2026 for under 25s, a paid one-year taster with no long-term commitment, aiming to grow to 1,000 spots annually. It's a desperate fix for a crisis where 12,850 joined, but 14,830 left in a year. Surveys of potential recruits show young men want action, camaraderie, and purpose, not gender-neutral facilities, LGBT pride events, or DEI workshops on microaggressions. The examples I could give here are the RAF pause for white male recruitment in 2022, to hit at diversity targets, reversed after backlash. Army introduced inclusive language guides and sensitivity training. Critics like ex-chiefs say this signals weakness, a military more concerned with feelings than fighting, compared to Russia that focuses on strength, or Israel, which is merit-based. They recruit fine without DEI quotas. And to do with John Carr's story, fired for speaking out against DEI. In the Marines, John Carr was supporting troops spiritually and morally. In 2023, he spoke publicly against DEI policies at a church event, saying they divide people by emphasising differences over shared mission. He argued quotas lower standards, create resentment, and undermine cohesion, the exact opposite of what fighting forces needs. The MOD sacked him for conduct unbecoming. Carr appealed, claiming free speech violation. In a 2024 video, he denied being a neo-Nazi, a smear from critics, insisting he was fighting dangerous policies in a regiment. No major public update in 2026, however. The case was likely settled quietly, but veterans still support him. Carr now campaigns against DEI, warning it weakens forces like in Afghanistan, Iraq failures. The MOD accused of briefing him against him, calling him a far-right linked to the Homeland Party, which you probably have seen with videos of him talking at our events. Carr strenuously denies neo-Nazi ties, saying he would leave the party if he was. And this really does expose the broader woke rot. And the examples I could give here with the veterans' outrage, mixed units weakness, and the 2026 reality. DEI defenders, MOD and Labour say it's essential for inclusive forces reflecting society, boosting minority or women recruitment, but numbers show diversity up slightly while overall enlistment falls. Veterans like ex-chiefs say DEI distracts from combat readiness, like for example the pronoun patrols, and mandatory bias training each time better spent on drills. The more examples I could give here is that the Army in 2025 belonging campaigns, the RAF diversity goals leading to white male policies. In 2026, global tensions like in the Ukraine and Middle East make this urgent. A woke military risks lives. John Carr's firing exemplifies the chill. Speak out, get canned. This is a betrayal. Troops who risked everything now face internal enemies pushing ideology over mission. Contrast that with the based militaries that win wars. And to do with the veteran outrage, groups like the British Legion and Versa call for DEI rollback, saying it's demoralising. Not in 2026 or the revolution on cars fesses the story. Proof politics trumps people. Now let's talk about the combat units. A key DEI push. In 2015, US military corps study found all male squads outperformed mixed gender units in 69% of 134, nice number, 93 out of 134, with mixed teams slower, less lethal and more prone to injury. Women had a higher fatigue levels, overuse injuries like stress fractures up to 7 times higher in some studies, and lower upper and lower body strength affecting load carrying and obstacle negotiation and marksmanship. Why DEI hiring fails here is because it lowers the standards to hit quotas, creates resentment, men compensating for the women's tasks, and undermines the merit. Cohesion suffers from distraction, distrust, and vulnerabilities in close quarters combat. Some studies show that mixed units can work in non-combat roles or with some adjustment, but for ground combat, the data leans against it. Risks can be fully mitigated without gender norm standards, which defeats the purpose. And with the gap year scheme launching in March 2026, will it attract recruits tired of work stuff, or is it too little too late? So anyway guys, hopefully you've enjoyed this video about me talking about DI hiring within the UK military. And obviously compared to other parts of different world's militaries, for example Russia's military or I think even the US, are also having these issues. Well, maybe not necessarily Russia, but obviously when you are having an army, you obviously, the whole point of a military is to basically just defend the land or defend the, I guess, the country from opposing forces. And obviously there were some like issues back in the day to do with, I guess, the Iraq War. Again, I don't know if there was any DI hiring then, but I think that when it comes down to women in the army, I don't think that is necessarily like the military have never gone, oh, women can never join. You know, for example, in the Navy SEALs, they never said women can't join. They've just meant that, oh, that basically you just have to go through selection like everyone else. And if obviously a woman goes through the selection and they can do it, then by all means that they can, you know, they can obviously show the job. You know, it's like saying, oh, like we shouldn't have gays in the army or like women, for example. And I just think that, well, like I said before, like, you know, it's okay to have women in the military to an extent. Obviously, just not having a merit of them just being hired as a DI hire, you know, like, oh, we need the recruitment up, so we need to bump our numbers. And it's just like, you know, you men want to fight for this country. And obviously people could say, oh, it's to do with like Zog or whatever, but I think like in the case of military, it's important that, you know, you get the discipline, and there are actually other issues financially. In the UK, for example, there are issues, apparently people have to pay for their own kit, and people say that, and I think John Carr actually mentioned this, is that people still have to pay taxes. People say that, oh, you don't have to pay taxes, which isn't true. People in the military within the UK, maybe some higher ranking, maybe they don't because they earn more, but I think it's more to do with that if you're a ground trooper, then you probably still have to pay tax. And obviously there was some housing issues, because remember there's these old army bases in the UK being turned into migrant camps, which obviously, you know, if you want to reuse military, you want to increase military spending, well, not increase military spending, sorry, but you want to basically make sure that you're using your resources correctly. So you want to make sure, I don't know, reuse these bases, but again, like I said, they're mostly being used as trying to fit migrants in to replace us all, which is obviously very concerning, and also to do with how why the military is probably weaker without using these military bases for like training or housing, which and as well there are also issues with the UK not looking after veterans. You know, it's not just to do with army pensions. You know, people don't have the mental health support. I think Josh Fernie, he's also a Homeland Party activist. He actually mentions that after the military, they don't get as much support. I think it's to do with, like, you know, if they've got PTSD or they've got some sort of trauma, it's hard for them to get past it. And obviously, people are a lot more aware of mental health. It's just that obviously the government are wasting money, especially on these migrant hotels, to actually get proper funding for better NHS training to do with the mental health. And I think that's just really important. But yeah, there's obviously a lot going on to do with more just in the military as well. And as well, if you want to click on these videos here, where I've talked about other aspects of this, including DEI, and also to do with DEI, not just in real life, but also to do with media. And as well, if you want to go to the link in the description below with links to my other socials and my Discord as well.